It's blue with brushes and blades, and today I want to go over how I do my bases for my Grey Knight army. This video is going to be a little bit longer than my normal content, but I got a new Grey Knight Terminator box, so let's dig into this box here. Really, the only thing I'm after today are these bases, so let's crack these open, get all this good stuff out of the way. So there will be some walls in today's videos. I'm not highly editing this video, but we are going to do all 5 of these bases. Actually, I have 5 more from a combat patrol box, so you know what? Let's do all 10. Get my glue, and digging for the, here's some cork that we're going to use for my basing material. Go ahead and crack open this new glue. Where are those other 5 bases at? I know they're around here somewhere. There we go. Like I said, there will be some lulls in this. I didn't want to highly edit this to miss any steps because I do want this to be very, very detailed. So first thing we're doing is we're going to put some glue onto these bases. And just a general amount. We don't want any spillage or anything going over the edges or anything like that. But we are going to do this on all the bases, a good amount, just not enough to go over the edges. All right, now that we have all of them all over the edges, we're going to just use the tip to rub them all around, get it right up to the edges. We don't want 100% up to the edge, and you'll see why later. But basically, when we go to break these apart from the cork, it's going to give different texture levels. You always want to be really good from one side to the other, from wherever your feet are, or whatever your base of your feet of your model are. You don't want them hanging off the edges or anything like that. All right, now that we have all those done, I'll let it sit for just a second so it glues firm, gets firm pretty quick, I should say. All right, we're gonna line this up nice and pretty, grab our cork, and then we're gonna press it for about 30 seconds. Because it is a roll of cork, I'm trying to hold it down pretty good. You can use anything else, like a book or a box or whatever. But for now, just gonna use my hands. Again, I'm gonna hold it down for about 30 seconds. Just enough where we can flip it over here in a moment. Should be about good. Just needed enough to stick, but we still want it wet enough where when we flip it, the glue will go into the cork, so it has a really good hold. All right. And then we're going to give it a little extra press to make sure it's holding nice. Hey, 10 discs, 10 fingers, perfect. Smash this in real good. Like I said, we want the glue now to kind of go into the cork. So 1, it has a good hold, and 2, it hardens that cork so we don't have to worry about it breaking off in the future. And this is going to change up that pattern of the glue, getting it nice and up to the edges. It should be good enough for now as it continues to dry while we go to the next step. All right, so now we're going to grab this a little bit more of an angled hobby knife here, and we're going to just scrape off the nip. Can I say nipples? We're going to scrape off the bottom disc nipple of all of these. All right, now that we got all those cleaned up, make sure there's no loose debris or anything like that. And I do magnetize all of my bases. So let me get 10 magnets together here real quick. All right, that should be good. Got our 10 magnets. I'm gonna go ahead and use my handle here that I made myself and make sure that they all stick on the right way. I made that mistake before in the past and not used it, and that's the whole purpose of it, and had to glue a magnet to a magnet. That was not a fun day. All right, I'm gonna fight with my glue here for a minute. Just get a nice little drop right on the center. Almost time to buy some more glue, huh? All right, we got all those done. Now let's start putting these magnets on. Again, we want to make sure we put them on the right way from our painting handle, so when we go to use these later to actually paint the base and paint our model, we have a good, firm, flat base to work with. I don't remember the size of these magnets off the top of my head, but I actually am getting low. So I'm going to have to order some more of these and do. All right, now we have all our magnets on all 10. Now I'm going to bust out my baggie of cork. Pretty much put all my scraps into this from any cork project, which has been the entirety of my Grey Knight army and other things. Oh, done a whole video on cork before. All right, and now we're just going to start just cutting off these larger pieces. Just to get to the base. Right, we're not trying to cut them up all the way to the edge right now, but we will be cleaning these up here in a moment. Like I said, right now we're just trying to get these larger pieces off. And again, like I said, this is going to be a longer video. It's going to be a little tedious to watch. Make sure I put a lot of chapters in here as I do this, so you can skip ahead if you're getting bored with a particular step. But again, like I said, I wanted to do a detailed video on how I do my bases. I've gotten a lot of comments on a lot of our shorts and other sites, a lot of comments on my basing method, so I wanted to do this video. All right, now we're going to be cutting in between. I keep getting my fingers stuck in the glue on the magnets, but it's fine as long as they stay in the middle. Right, yep, just keep slicing in between with our hobby knife. Should be about good. Let's see, yep, all right. Pretty much sliced in between all of them. Let's break these in half. I just keep getting glue all over my fingers. Tighten that back down real quick. All right, and like I said, I'm going to keep my little chunks in my little plastic bag here. You never know what you can use them for later. All right, let's start popping these apart. And because the glue has been set now, it's probably been almost like 10 minutes now. So this is nice and firm. So I'm just ripping these right off. And I actually do want to rip them off because I want that varied texture. All right. Now we have a lot of space to work with here. Let's go ahead and start cleaning up here a bit and get some better workspace. All right, this looks like a good one to start with. All right, so yep, still wet there on the bottom with the magnet. Let's get my baggie ready, and we're just gonna start ripping off chunks. There we go. No crazy method to it. I actually preferred this edged look. And then you just use your fingernail or hobby knife, depending on what kind of edge you're looking for. I'm looking for, man, this glue is really going fast trying to get this video going here. So getting some variables is what makes this look good. We want some overcliffs. We want some almost like hill-like textures. We want some places for the next step to, or the next textured step to be able to sit. So, but again, we want the cork at least on two sides to be all the way up to the edge so we know that we have a good stance for our feet. Save every little bit of cork here. All right, that's one done, and we got 9 more to go. It's looking really good there. All right, save all the pieces. I've had this bag for quite some time. All right, let's get the next one going. Just start ripping edges off. Again, we want that varied texture. Actually came out really good right off the rip. I like this hill. I'm liking this one. All right, that's 2 done. Just rip it off like a band-aid and you get these nice edges. All right, now we got all of those done. Got some other ones. We're trying some other glue on, but now I have my Pro Acryl primer, and we're really gonna saturate this. Right, so I'm not gonna waste any other stuff. I'm just gonna pour it right onto the base because we do want it to seep into all these cricks and cracks. And clean this up. Might as well use it. Waste not, want not. And we're just gonna spread it around. Really good on the top. And again, we're just trying to get it all into all the little cricks and cracks because we don't want any of this cork color coming through. And now for the fun part is once we get this top part done, we got to get in all these cricks and crevices that we made. Right, so we're gonna just take a little bit more and we're gonna get to the sides. Don't worry about getting it on the base of the rim or anything like that. That's fine. We're gonna go over the cleanup process in this video. There's no magic today. This is again a super detailed video on this and how I make my bases. I do find it a lot. I used to stream, so I find it my video style comes out more better in a streaming style than like a YouTuber style, but it's okay. But like I said, we're just gonna paint away here, make some happy little bases. And again, not wasting any time. And we're just gonna put it right onto the base. Anyway, if it's soaking in there. All right. Probably get the point at this time. As you see here, we have some other pieces that you didn't see me make with some edges that were a little bit bigger than we initially wanted to. So right now that glue is drying on these ones where you see like 2 and 3 pieces glued onto it. Rip those off when we're ready. We're just letting that glue dry, but that will be the same process. Depending on the size of the base and the size of the model is what I will give like that width that I was talking about. Sometimes I like to do like cracks and stuff like that, and well, marry up like 2 pieces when I glue it all together. But these Terminators, for my army, at least for now, I'm really hoping for a new range for 10th, but currently I'm still rocking these older ones that are like the smaller size, but their feet stance, their leg stance is very wide. So I've made that mistake before in the past. And so we're just going to smooth this out nicely so it dries relatively quick. But again, I keep reiterating it because it's so important to just make sure you have 2 edges that go all the way out. And that's pretty good. I'll just clean it up a little bit so it dries a little bit faster. Like I said, don't worry about getting it on the edges. Next. All right, now we got them all primed up. I used a hair dryer to speed up this drying process. So they're looking really good and dry now. All right, now for the next step, we're gonna go into our Pro Acryl Red Earth Light texture. We're gonna use this little hobby tool, it's a little silicone tip. It's a flat one I find is the best one for this step. So there we go. And just pop that magnets right on there now. At this step, you can get kind of messy, but you do want to avoid getting stuff as little as possible on the base, especially the grainy stuff, like the paint part. So it's just like the red is fine to get on the rim, but it makes the cleaning up process a lot more annoying the more you get onto the rim. But trying to get it in there, work it from both edges. You are putting on quite a lot in this step, but pulling it like this I find is the best way not to get too much on the rim. And this is just going to give us that, it's going to cover up any cracks where the glue really didn't get to the edge as well as we wanted, or cover up any extra glue from where we ripped, and just gives it a nice hill texture. Almost all of my gray knights, again, all my gray knights have been done in this manner, and it elevates them a little bit because of their stature, plus it just looks really good. All right, I'm gonna go back here and just get the edge. You generally do have to do this one twice. This stuff doesn't have a lot of shrinkage, but it does like to transfer paint more than texture sometimes, especially because we're using this tool and we're actually pulling it. So I'd like to make sure I get the edge real good between the top and the rim of the base. But again, I like pulling in this method to kind of make them all look like their own little plateaus. Try not to come in with too much. Don't worry about getting it on the top, because that is the next step. This cork is, I'll cover that in a moment. When we get to that step, let's not get ahead of myself. All right, and we're gonna keep going here. Sometimes we're gonna do skulls later, but sometimes I'll actually do skulls before this step to kind of have them buried within this, and it comes out looking really good. I'm trying to tell a story with my bases. There's two different tufts that I use, and I use skulls. I at least try to put on one skull per every base. All right, now we're just gonna take some and put it on the top. This isn't for color, this is for texture, because we are gonna cover this up with some paints. So that one's done. Now to the next one. Again, we're just gonna slap it on, trying to minimize what we get on the rim.
2 hours later.
All right, this stuff, because we are going on so thick, it takes quite a long time to dry. So yes, 2 hours, probably more than that. They actually probably had a whole day to dry because I had to go to work and had a busy next day. So didn't work on this project until like 2 days later. All right, so now I've cut off various angles of these skulls to just get them even closer to make them look like they're semi-buried. So again, that's the story that I'm trying to tell. So what I'm looking for is I'm trying to find like the best place, the deepest place where the edge comes to the rim. All right, we're gonna find a good location and randomly put the skull. I try not to make them all facing the same way. They're not all perfectly facing straight out, or sometimes I'll even put them upside down, completely sideways. And like I said, sometimes I even bury them within the red earth texture stuff. All right, clean up my glue tip here a little bit. Oh, yep, whole rim of glue came off probably from the previous step of doing these bases and rubbing it around. All right, again, we're just looking for the deepest place and we use that to put these skulls. All right, here's another one. Get it in there. Again, I just use like hobby, like the, not the hobby knife, but not the hobby, like sprue cutter I use, and just chop off a chunk. I've literally on some of them been able to use 2 and cut it in half. All right, now we're gonna, that's all been given a little bit of time to dry. Now we're gonna move into our straight up just orange. And again, a Monument Hobbies orange. And we're gonna use our big fat dry brush, utilizing that magnet with our painting handle again. You know, with just nice circle motions just across the top. Right, so I'm just gonna use this little pot disc here. I'm not using my dry palette. Actually, my wet palette for this at all. All gonna be dry, using our dry brush. Smear it around in there nice and good. Not gonna use it quite like a dry brush. We're not trying to get a light coat. We're trying to get deep in those cracks all across the top. So that flat part of the brush is perfect for this. All right, now we're just gonna give the edges a nice little dab. Now we're really actually dry brushing, just getting a light amount of that orange on the red to kind of just moot how dark that red is. So it's not that much of a transition. All right, that's one done. Get a little dab, spread it around nice in there. And again, real heavy. And I don't even care if I get it on the skull, because I actually want that orange to kind of come through. Again, we're trying to tell a story. These skulls have been here for a minute, and our Grey Knights are here to figure out why all these people are dead. Right. And again. All right, let's use the power of editing, and let's try to show you like 2 and 3 every time for every step. But again, we're doing 10, and I'm not trying. The original cut of this video was like 2 hours long of recording all the steps. A little better angle of how I'm just dabbing to get some color on the red parts. And this is one of those bases that I put on a little extra and just ripped off that you didn't see. Again, same thing here. We're not really not too concerned about getting any paint on the rims. And this one's a little dark. Oh, just dab it on there a little bit more. And this one is still a little dark too. Get some of this extra paint off my brush real quick. All right, those are all done. As you can see, there's still a lot of black coming through. So we're gonna use a little bit more orange and do a second coat. And we're gonna use the exact same method, but this time we're really only worried about the top part. I love doing that with these magnets. Just toss that thing on there. All right. And we're gonna just dab the darker parts. I'm not too worried about the edges being too dark with the black primer coming through, because this yellow is going to come in here shortly, and we're gonna use that on the edges. Is this gonna be a little bit faster? Yeah, it's gonna be a little bit faster because we're not too concerned about it right now. All right. All the edges, let that dry. And again, we did use a hair dryer in between this. Pretty much anything that is a cut with a painting process is probably a hair dryer when it comes to paint. I use the hair dryer to speed up the process of the drying from the primer, from the first coat of this orange, the second coat of this orange, and now we're gonna go into this warm yellow. Base is looking really good with this orange now. I'm not even gonna clean my brush because I want a good transition, just checking to see if it's dry enough. Not even cleaning my brush, just getting some yellow on there. And we're just gonna get nice all over the brush, and we're gonna feather the, I'm gonna stab this out just a little bit. Yeah, it's not a lot of orange, but you'll see. All right, and we're just gonna feather the edge inward. just to highlight the edges. Now we don't want to oversaturate and get yellow on the underside of these ridges. It's just to brighten it up, because we are actually going to darken these down again in another step, in the next step. Again, just feather inward directly from the top with our dry brush, just to highlight that edge. Now this looks really bright at this stage, but don't worry. If you're trying to copy this style, it works out in the end. Get some more on here. Again, just feather and pull inward, feather and pull inward. And we're not worried about getting it on the skull, because we want them to look like they've been there for a minute. All right. Now we have that. Now here's a completed one versus the stage that we're at now. All right, see that, how that yellowish highlight comes through. All right, now we're gonna break out our red earth again, but this time we're just gonna use this angled one, this pointing pencil brushed edge, and we're gonna get in all the little nicks and cracks. Now we're literally going to finger paint stage here, and we're just gonna use the paint. Again, we're not actually too worried about the texture. What we want is the color match. So we put it where the orange is really bright, or not bright, in the middle, where the yellow is not, and we're doling this all down. And it's picking up the previous red texture that we put when we were putting it directly onto the primer. So it's picking up those edges where you put that down. So we're basically dry brushing with our finger. The purpose of that is to kind of just make it hit all these edges and weathered. We're also, we're gonna go back. Oh, I just totally ripped off a whole piece of cork, and we're just gonna fill that in with red earth. But again, that's why we want, it works out. It's a happy little tree. That's what I always tell myself when I make a mistake. Happy little accidents. All right, and back to it. And we're just gonna use our finger and rub around this color. If you've seen my rhino video, this is, well, I didn't use my finger, but basically the same thing. I dry brushed my rhino treads. And I'm gonna actually get it in this crack here. All right. And we're gonna just kind of highlight some of the higher edges. I'm not too worried about any particulars or anything like that. Almost just scraping over. We're not trying to insert it unless there's like an opening. Like I said, this stuff doesn't have a lot of shrinkage, but sometimes if you put it too light in some areas, it'll look like you've covered it, but you didn't. So we're gonna use this step. And I mostly put this in the darker areas, but I'm okay with covering up some of the orange that we put down to kind of highlight it. Now here's the fun part, the skulls. I want them to look like they're been buried. So we're gonna put some around it and smudge it into these cracks and crevices around the skull. And again, I really like using these silicone brushes for this step, because this stuff does dry like really hard, and it actually comes off. If you clean it pretty much immediately from using it, these silicone tools, it does actually get cleaned up fairly quickly. All right, this is looking good around the skull. Again, we're not trying to do too much. We're not trying to destroy any of the dry brushing that went over this portion, but mostly we want to make sure there's no black showing from our primer. And just varied colors. This is looking really good. I'm gonna add some more. These bases aren't really bright. We use this red earth to really wash it down. There, a little comparison to a completed one. That one's still a little wet. There we go. Separate them so I know which ones have already been done. Now, I have done in the past why I started putting that texture on the primer is that it doesn't look as good when you go to try to dial this down a little bit. It looks way better with putting some texture on directly onto the primer portion. And then when we get to this step, it really highlights that out. You know, we're just kind of putting this in the cricks and crevices that we want to look a little darker. I should make a diorama one day of this. And see, here's like a little part. It's not probably not shrinkage, because this stuff doesn't really have that much shrinkage. Just filling any gaps between the base, filling any cricks and cracks we want to be a little bit darker, and then any places where you see primer still. And now we're going to go into the skull. We want it to look like it's buried. And we're going to push it in there pretty well. Make it nice and flat and make sure it looks like it's not some random add-on. Yep, there we go. Just push that right in there with my finger. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Let's get it in here. Behind here. Again, not forgetting any little cricks or cracks. Still black primer right there. Just giving it almost like a feathering. Get some varied colors in here. Some black primer right there. And let's dial this section down right here a little bit more. Oh, yes. Yeah, I need to make a diorama and try to tell the story a little bit more. All right, that's too done. So this is like a second coat. I always try not to overdo it, and I'd rather put on another coat of it with my finger, because stuff, when it does dry, it does get really dark. So I don't want to overdo it. It's too much. There we go. Really get in there around that skull. Oh, that's going to be a good one. Sometimes it's easier just to use your finger. All right, again, it's varied texture. All the way up to the edge. Too much yellow here. Not quite all the way up to the edge right there. Almost this whole section here. Like this flat area here. Probably put a second skull right here on this one just for funsies. All right, kind of scrape it off. Got an edge here. Again, I wanted to make a super detailed video on how I did this. I could have made this like a 15-minute here, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 video, but no. I wanted to do a very detailed one. Again, I will put a bunch of chapters in here so you can skip ahead and jump around where you feel like you want some steps. And I am doing 10 bases in one setting, so I'll try to keep just showing you the first 3. These are all a little bit different, right? You want them to be unique. I've never understood. I also do enjoy the painting side of the hobby more than I enjoy the playing side of the hobby, but I've never really enjoyed the mentality of tabletop ready where you just do 3 colors and call it a day. It's a little plastic dude that I'm going to keep forever. I'm not going to paint it quickly. All right, now we're gonna get into these skulls. Super watered down khaki. All right, so khaki is pretty much the color I use for all my skulls. Anytime I'm painting bone, and it's also the color I use as my base of my scrolls on all of my guys. And let's see here. So I think this is like 3 drops of water, probably for like 2 drops of paint. It's really, really diluted, really, really wet. All right, and we're just kind of using this. We don't even want to cover it up because we want that orange to come through. Again, really wet. Just kind of highlighting it, not getting it on any of the terrain around it. Just kind of highlighting what should be highlighted. We do want these to look like they're buried. All right, and when these dry, because this is so thin, that orange is still really going to punch through. And you'll see. Let's get this one done. This one's got a nice crack in it. Just leave some of that red in there so it highlights it even more. Or not. It'll punch through. All right, we got all of them done. And you can see, it gets close up here, that orange, there we go, focus, there we go. That orange is still punching through. And we definitely wanted that. And again, we used a hairdryer to make the drying process faster. And now we're gonna go into brown wash, again, by Pro Acryl. That one's still kind of wet. Yeah, this one looks good. All right, and I want it to seep into the eyes first. So let's teeth in the eyes, most highlighted portion that I want. Get it right up to the edge. Now this stuff will seep right into this texture material. So you gotta be careful with getting it on, and it will change the color almost to a black because of the dark red and this brown. All right, just making sure we have it good in the eyes and in the teeth. And we got it all around with this brown wash. Looks pretty good. All right, so let it sit flat for it dries the way it should. Letting it pull naturally. All right, again, hitting the eyes and then the teeth. And then all the edges right up to the edge. Again, try not to get it on the base. It's not the end of the world if you do. Again, you're telling a story, or I'm telling a story with these bases. Set these teeth up a little bit better. So basically what I'm trying, it's like scorched earth kind of thing going on here. And the ground is literally skulls. I'm hoping for an updated, when we finally get our codex for Grey Knights for 10th, I'm really hoping we get a new Caligor Drago, because I'm probably going to use that model to like emphasize the story. I'm basically going to put down an entirety of skull base. I can't wait. All right, again, hit the edges, hitting the eyes, hitting the teeth really good. Avoiding. There we go. All right, now this process I do not recommend. Anytime I'm using a wash, I do not use a hairdryer. So we're gonna have a nice pause here. And I actually went and did a second coat to really make them look like they're burnt. All right, now we're gonna go up into the cleaning phase here. I'm using the back of my hobby knife and we're just scraping off. We don't want to gouge into it, so this is highly at an angle. And we're not trying to gouge into the plastic, but You are going to take a little bit of it off, but just like if you were cleaning up lines off of your minis, we're trying to clean up and scrape right up to the edge. So just little tiny scrapes. Try to avoid getting too much shavings onto the paint areas, because for whatever reason it likes to sit in there. It'll find the littlest crick and crack. So I constantly cleaning my hands, cleaning the base off here. Being super careful around the skull, because sometimes my skulls are actually hanging over the base. If I do run into a section like this one right here, I'll grab a file and just scrape it off, because like I said, this stuff, when it dries, this red earth, it dries really hard. This area right here is kicking my butt with this hobby knife and kind of getting it. Again, the biggest thing we want to avoid is actually gouging this plastic. It's looking pretty good. I'm probably like 1,000 points into my Grey Knight army, if not more. And I've yet to pick a rim color. I don't know what rim color I want to do. So all my bases are just scraped black. And we're just using the back of this knife to get right up to the edge, cleaning up all the orange, and the biggest pain in the butt is getting off that red earth. That's looking really good. Little deep in some areas. And the biggest thing to do is avoid scratching your skull, which I've done a dozen times. Yeah, this base is looking really good. Again, we did do a second coat of a brown wash to really make these skulls look like they're burnt. There's some areas I'm gonna have to go back over and hit. Big thing you want to avoid is scraping into the cork areas, because then you gotta really fix that. All right, those are all done. I'm gonna kind of show all of them off here. Nice clean edges. What we got here? All right, so here's the completed one with tufts and everything. I'll go in and add tufts. I generally don't add my tufts until I have my model pinned on here. You can see there's some pin-on holes. I do pin all my Grey Knights, especially because I'm using cork. So, and then I super glue the opposite end, which we can go over that in another video at a later time. But this is how I make all my bases right here. Here's a completed one that we saw in the very beginning. And so this is what my end product will look like with these. Pretty much I've done everything but add the tufts. And like I said, I don't add my tufts until I put my models on. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe.